Here's a short explanation of the game Sagrada. It's produced by Floodgate Games and is for 1 to 4 players, ages 10 and up. The average game time is about 30 to 40 minutes, with the objective of the game to score the most points by building the most beautiful stained glass window. Here's what's in the box: 12 window pattern cards, 4 window frame player boards, 90 dice, 5 different colors, 18 dice of each. The satchel, 12 tool cards, 10 public objective cards, 5 private objective cards, the round tracker board, 24 favor tokens, and 4 scoring markers. To set up, each player receives a window frame player board. Shuffle the private objective cards, deal 1 to each player. Players may look, but not reveal. Next, shuffle the window pattern cards. Give 2 to each player. The player needs to look at their 2 cards and decide which card and side they are going to play. The card they do not want is returned to the box. The card and the side they choose are placed that side up into the player board. When deciding on which card to keep, players may want to look here. The number of dots determine how difficult or easy this particular card will be in completing for the game, 3 being the easiest and 6 being the hardest. Depending on which card each player chooses, they'll also need to collect that many favor tokens based on the difficulty of their card. So if they choose a difficulty of 3, they should take 3 favor tokens. Place the round tracker board in the center of the playing area. Each player should collect their scoring marker and keep it with them for now. Shuffle all of the tool cards, then place 3 cards face up in the center of the playing area. Shuffle the public objective cards and place 3 cards face up in the center of the playing area. Place all of the dice inside of the satchel. Choose one player to go first and give that player the satchel. Now we're ready to play. The game is played over 10 rounds. At the start of the round, the player with the satchel needs to reach inside and randomly select the appropriate amount of dice needed based on the number of players playing the game. In a 2-player game, they take 5 dice. 3-player game, 7 dice, and for a 4-player game, they select 9 dice. Once the player has grabbed the right amount of dice, they roll them in the center of the playing area. These dice are now the draft pool. Now we get to each player's individual turn. On a player's turn, they have 3 options. They can do them in any order. They can take 1 die and place it in their window pattern. They can choose to use one of the tool cards by spending a favor token. Or they can choose to pass, taking no option. Each action is optional. A player may choose to do both actions or only one, or they can just pass to the next player. So you start with the player with the satchel. Once they have completed their turn, the player to their left goes, and so on, until the last player makes their choice. Once the last player makes their choice, they then make a second choice, and play goes back around in the opposite direction until the player with the satchel takes a second turn. This means that each player will get 2 turns per round. Whatever dice are left over at the end of all turns are placed onto the round tracker board. Once that is completed, the satchel is now passed to the left, and the process repeats itself over the next 9 rounds. Now let's take a look at what to do with your dice once you have selected them from the draft pool. On your player board, you will see different patterns of colors and numbers. On a colored space, you can only place a die there that is of that color. The number does not matter unless it doesn't follow the other placement rules. The number spaces indicate that only a die with that number can be placed there regardless of color. The white spaces mean that you can place any number or color on that space so long as it does follow the other placement rules. And what are those placement rules? The first die placed in the game must be placed along the outside border. Every die after that must be placed adjacent to another die that has already been placed. It can be horizontal, vertical, or diagonally adjacent. When placing a die horizontally or vertically adjacent to another die, it cannot be the same number or color of the die that is already in play. So for example, if I had this happening on my board and I had selected this red 2, here are the locations I could place that die. I could not place it in any of these spaces. The further you go along in the game, the more challenging it will be to fill in your board, but luckily, you have the tool cards that you can use to help you along the way. If you're the first player to use a tool card, you place one of your favor tokens on that card. Any players who also choose to use that tool card will now need to place 2 favor tokens if they wish to use that tool card. Tool cards will allow you to do a variety of things depending on which 3 cards are in play for a particular game. Let's take a look at this example. This tool is called the grinding stone. Using this tool will allow you to take a drafted die and flip it to the number that is on the opposite side. Like let's say a 1 was rolled, but you needed a 6. You could pay to use this tool and then flip that die over to the opposite side, which is 6. Or this example of this card, which will allow you to move 2 dice that are already on the board to a new location within the rules of placement. Use the tools wisely because once you run out of favor tokens, there is no way to replenish them during the game. At the end of the 10th round, it's time to do the scoring. Remove all of the dice from the round tracker board and flip it over to the scoreboard. All players will now place their scoring marker on the 0. If while scoring they pass 50 points, flip the marker over to the 50 side and continue. Each player now scores their points based on what objectives they were able to complete. First, the public objectives. For each time a player completes a public objective, they would score this many points listed on the card. For example, if this card was one of the public objectives, they would score 5 points for each column on their board that has no repeating colors in the column. So the max that they could score from this card would be 25 points. Next, they look at their private objective card. Private objectives are all about a certain color dice. Like this card is for the yellow dice. A player who has this card would total all of the numbers of the yellow dice that are on their board, such as what you see here in this example. Next, players total their unused favor tokens. They collect 1 point for each unused favor token. And finally, if any player has an incomplete window, they lose 1 point for each square that is missing a die. Once all players have completed scoring, the player with the highest score is the winner. If in the event of a tie, the player who has the highest points from their private objectives is the winner. Now, it's time for you to create your own masterpiece. Let's play.